In my previous video, I told you how I got started in coding and why I chose Python as my first programming language. In this video, we will use ChatGPT and GitHub Copilot to help us learn the basics of Python. The great thing about ChatGPT is that it's not only an amazing coding assistant, as we will see in this series of tutorials, but also an amazing tutor, always available at every stage of your curriculum. We will start by asking ChatGPT the basic Pythonic principles everyone should learn at the beginning of their coding journey. Then we will explore those suggestions with concrete examples which we will run in PyCharm. Let's dive in. So, as you can see on the screen here, I've asked to ChatGPT which are the basic Pythonic principles everyone should learn at the start of their coding journey. And I would say that the answer is pretty relevant. So, the different data types, we will explore those data types in a moment. The way you can control the flow in your code using, for instance, if, elif, else for the conditions, and also the loops, obviously very important in Python, the for loop, the while loop. The functions also, so how can we create a function which we can then reuse in our code? We use functions all the time. Error handling also, so if something goes wrong in the code, how do you handle the errors with try, except, else, and finally. Also, how can you import modules inside of your code, so if you're using Python libraries. Also, object-oriented programming. To be fair, I don't use object-oriented programming that much with the classes. I'm more a procedural, sequential type of coder, and that's perfectly fine, at least in the beginning for simple projects. But we can also have a look at the basic principles of OOP in this tutorial. I won't really cover the Zen of Python, but we can then go to the coding conventions and, of course, exploration and practice. You need to practice almost every day, like for any other type of skill, if you want to improve your coding skills. But that's very easy today if you're using a coding assistant like ChatGPT or GitHub Copilot, which is integrated in your IDE, in your code editor. When I started learning Python in September 2022, there was no coding assistant. There was no GitHub Copilot. There was no ChatGPT. So I would say I learned the hard way by watching a few tutorials on YouTube, and then I started practicing on my own in PyCharm, because this was the IDE that was recommended by Mosh in his series of tutorials. You can also use, obviously, Visual Studio, and I will show you by the end of this tutorial how Visual Studio integrates more deeply GitHub Copilot. You have a GitHub Copilot chat inside of Visual Studio, which you don't have yet in PyCharm. It's still in beta, and there's a waiting list if you want to experiment with the GitHub Copilot chat inside of PyCharm. So we just have the suggestions, the completion, the code completion in PyCharm, not the embedded chat. But that's not really an issue for the tutorial today. So, the first thing we have to explore is readability in Python code. And I've already prepared this tutorial by asking to our friend ChatGPT, show me a concrete example of this readability importance. So how to demonstrate the importance of readability. I would say that the first one was a bit complex, too sophisticated for a beginner, because it already introduces those functions, and the functions are not the very first thing that you will learn when you start learning Python. So I asked for a more simple example for beginners who don't know about functions yet. And this is the example. The example is comparing a less readable version of the code and a more readable version of the code. This code is just supposed to calculate the area, the surface of a rectangle. So we have here L for length, then we have B for breadth, and then we have the area, which is the length multiplied by the breadth. But if you don't know what those letters stand for, obviously it's very difficult to read this code. Whereas if you explicitly mention the words when you're declaring the variables, then it's much easier to understand. So the variable is length, which equals 10 in this example. The breadth is the other variable, which equals 5. And then you create another variable, which is area, which is the multiplication of length by breadth. And then you can print the result. Area of the rectangle is area. So we can just copy this code inside of this window of PyCharm. Okay, so we've got the code there, as you can see. And now we will run the code. So you have to understand that if you have a file called main.py in your PyCharm project, this will be the default file which will run if you run the project. But you can also choose current file, and here I don't have any main.py anyway, and you can decide which file you want to run, which is very easy. So we will just run this one. And as you can see at the bottom, we have the solution, the result, which is 50. So that's just an example of how you can improve the readability of your code by using, as they say, explicit variables instead of those letters, which I would say a newbie would not understand if they read those lines of code. So what was the second thing that we had to learn? Understanding data types. Okay, so we have different data types: integers, floats, string, list, tuples, sets, dictionaries, etc. So we will just ask ChatGPT to also give us a code example for that. So give me a simple code example to explain data types. And so here is an example. Sure, here is a simple Python script that demonstrates some of the basic data types. So the integers, the floats, strings, lists, dictionaries. Okay, so we will copy this and I will explain it to you inside of PyCharm. So let's paste this. Okay, let's remove for the moment this thing. Okay, so we have integer first. That's one type of data. Integer are all numbers, so without decimals, like age equals 25. We will print the results in a moment. Then we have float for decimal numbers. So temperature equals 72.3, that's in Fahrenheit. String, which is a sequence of text characters, like name equals Alice. List, which is a collection of items inside square brackets, as you can see here. Square bracket and square bracket. Red, green, blue. Then you can add an element to this list. So the list is called colors, and I want to append yellow, and then we will see how yellow is added to this list of colors. Then we have a dictionary, which is usually what you have in a JSON file. So for instance, a student with a name of John Doe, an age of 20, and those are the courses that are followed by John Doe. And as you can see, you've got here the key and the value. The key name, the value John Doe. The key age, the value, which is an integer, 20. The key here courses, and the value, which is here a list. And we will print out all the elements that are describing this student in a moment. Let me move my face. And here we also see how we can access a specific value from this dictionary by key. So I told you that name is a key and the value is John Doe. So if you want to access this key and the value behind the key, we just say, okay, this is the dictionary student, and we want to access the value of the key name. So now we can print the result of all of that. So let's print this out. Let's move my face. Let's make this bigger, maybe. Okay, so we see for the integer example that we have the age of 25, for the float the temperature of 72.3, for this string Alice, and as you can see the quotes were removed. You need to use the quotes to define the string, like this, name equals Alice, but then when you print it out, the quotes are removed. We have the example of the list, and then we have updated the list by adding the yellow color. So that was here in the example. Okay, so append yellow. So when you take the name of the list, colors, and then dot and append, and then parentheses, I've removed the dot, and then parentheses, you see that you can insert a new color between quotes, between simple quotes, and then it will be added to the list. So we will have red, green, blue, and yellow, as we can see here when it's printed out. Okay, and then we have the example of the dictionary, and we are accessing the name of the student, which is John Doe. So those are the different data types that were explained by this example, and I think that this example missed the concept of tuples. The concept of tuples. And I will also explain how it's different with a code example. Okay, so we have this concept of tuples that we want to cover. So tuples are very similar to the lists, but they are not presented in the same way. They are presented between parentheses instead of square brackets, as explained here by ChatGPT. So we have here this code example, which I will copy inside of PyCharm. So I will just close the results and copy this again. Move my face there. Okay, so we have a list, as you can see, between square brackets, the list, and then we have a tuple between parentheses. So we can print the list, we can print the tuple. If we want to change the first element of the list, we can just say that my list will be accessed, and then we want to change the first element, and that's important to understand the concept of index now. So when you have a list like with apple, banana, and cherry, the first element has an index of 0, the second element has an index of 1, the third element has an index of 2. So if you want to change the first element, you access the index of 0, and you say, for instance, that it has to become kiwi. And it works because the lists between square brackets can be modified. They are mutable, okay? Then we can also append an element, we've just seen it in the other example, to the list called my list, orange, and it will be added to this. And we can access also the second element in the list, like here I told you that the second element has an index of 1, so we can say, okay, I want you to print out the second element of my list. And in the same way, you can also access the second element of your tuple, and it's also the index of 1. So we will just print out the result of all of that and have a look at how it looks like. So the list, as you can see, between square brackets, the tuple between parentheses, the updated list where we have changed the first element with index 0 in the list, kiwi is there. And then we have appended orange. As you can see, kiwi stayed there because all of this code is running sequentially. So if the list has been modified and we have changed the first element, we have replaced apple by kiwi. The list now contains kiwi as the first example. Okay, here, first element. Then we have appended orange. And then we want to print out the second element with the index of 1 in our list. So that was here, index of 1. and this is banana, and that's the same for the tuple. Okay, but you can't change the elements in a tuple. The tuple is kind of frozen in your code. It's immutable, but you can access the elements in the tuple. So that's the last variable I think that we wanted to cover in this series of examples. And now, yes, we will go to control flow, number 3. And we will ask ChatGPT to explain us with a code example the concept of control flow. So please show me a simple code example explaining the concept in control flow. Oops, that's an issue of ChatGPT. Sometimes it doesn't work. So let's regenerate this. Here we go. So we will cover if, elif, else, and also the loops like for and while. And you will see the connection between the loops and the list, probably, in this example. So let's do this. Okay. Yes. Let's copy this inside of PyCharm, and we will comment it together. Okay, so that's the example. There's no list, I think, in the example for the for loop, but I will ask for an example using a list in a moment. So let's just prepare it. Give me an example of a for loop using or iterating, let's say, on the elements of a list. So that will be for the next example, or maybe I can just add it to my code. Yes, I can do that. So as you can see, when you are inside of ChatGPT, if you want to copy one of the code snippets that were suggested, you just hit the copy button, and then we will go inside of PyCharm. We'll close this at a moment. Okay, so that's for the control flow. And we will say that dh, so that's the variable, is 25. Remember, it's an integer, 25. And we will print if the age is less than 13, child, will be a child. If the age is less than 20, teenager. And if it's none of those, adult. So that's the if condition. The elif condition, that's another possibility. And for all other possibilities, we print adult. And obviously, you can expect what will be printed out in a moment. So now we will have the for loop. So we can iterate through different types of data. Here we iterate through the letters of a string. So that's a string Python. And we will say, okay, those are the characters in the word. And then we will say that for each letter in this word, we will print out the letter individually. So it will print out P, Y, T, H, O, N. So it will iterate through all of the letters until the last one. And in this example, at the end, we define a list between square brackets. And we have apple, banana, cherry, durian, and elderberry. And we will iterate through this list. So we will say, sorry, for fruit in fruits, print I like and the fruit. And it will print out I like apple, I like banana, I like cherry, durian, and elderberry. And we also had the while condition. So we have a count of 5. So we go up to 5, and we start the countdown. And here we will remove 1 unit at each iteration. So each time we run this loop, the while loop, we will remove 1 from the total. So it will be 5 the first time it runs, and 4, then 3, then 2, then 1, then 0. And when the while loop is over, we go to the next line, because I told you that Python is running sequentially. So the different snippets of code run one after the other. So when the while loop is over, it just says lift off. Boom, the rocket can take off. So we will run all of this. And it prints out the count here, so we will see the progression of this while loop. So let's just run the demo, and we will have a look at the results. So as you expected, because the age was 25, we have an adult printed out. So remember those conditions: if the age was less than 13, less than 20, else. That was the else, which was the result, so adult. Then the characters in Python, all the letters, so we iterated through the word. Here we have the countdown starting 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and then boom, lift off. And here we iterated through the different elements of the list of fruits. And you can see I like apple, banana, cherry, durian, elderberry. So that's the demo of those concepts for the control flow as defined by ChatGPT. There would be some other, other use cases or other examples that we could cover, but that gives us a rough idea of the control flow. So let's come back to the beginning to see what we have left. The functions. Okay, functions, super important. So give me a simple, a simple code example to explain the concept of functions. Then give me also a code example for error handling. So that's the next one, but we do it together so that we just have to ask one question. Here we go. So let's go to the end. By the way, I'm using ChatGPT 4 code interpreter at the moment. For basic Python coding, you can also use GPT 3.5. It will do the job. But if you want to be sure that you've got the best model, just use GPT 4, which you can use extensively if you have a GPT Plus subscription. So first, let's understand the concept of functions. Okay, so we will close the result here. We'll come back here, move my face, and we will explain the concept of functions. So functions are defined by using def, and then we give the function a name, like here, calculate area. We have variables inside of this parenthesis, so we will pass a length and we will pass a width, and then it will return the result, which is the area being the length multiplied by the width, as you can see here. And here we have two examples. So we have the first example being an area for a length of 10 and a width of 5, and another example where we use the same function again with a length of 20 and a width of 3. So you see here length and then the integer, but actually you just pass the integers, the numbers. So it would be area 3, for instance, equals, and then calculate area, and then we will have let's say 20, 10, like this. As you can see, it gives us some indications of what it is, but it's passing inside of the parentheses 20 and 10, not length 20 and width 10. Okay, and I can add this third example here, so I can just copy this. And actually, I've got a suggestion from GitHub Copilot. So if I press on Tab on my keyboard, I would just accept the suggestion for this third example. and we will run the code. Here we go. So we have the area of the first rectangle 50, 60, and the third one, which we have added manually, was 200. So that's correct. So we define the function with def, def, followed by the name of the function, here calculate area, then between the parentheses the elements that we want to pass to this function, here length and width, which will be replaced by those integers, 10 and 5 for instance here, and then we have a colon at the end of this line, and if we press on enter, you can see that you've got the indent here. So if you put those ones there, it won't work. They have to be indented properly, and so when you press enter, it has to go there. Okay, so I will just do it again and put it in the right place. Otherwise, it won't work. And as you can see here, we have a suggestion from GitHub Copilot telling us that this function indeed calculates the area of a rectangle. That could be a comment here, like this. That's not really useful, but that's a nice suggestion. And then we had 3 different results possible depending on the variables that we pass. So we have area 1, area 2, area 3, and then we just printed out those elements. And that could be also a good moment to show you the concept of f strings and strings when we print out something. So let's say, for instance, that I want to print, so I will use my parentheses. So I want to print again area 1 like here, but I want to actually declare this variable in another way. So I can use what it's called f string. That's been available since Python 3 was released. And as you can see, we have the correct suggestion by GitHub Copilot. If I press on tab, I have here some text, some string, area of first rectangle, and then in the same in the same sequence inside of the quotes. So we have 2 simple quotes here. That could be 2 double quotes if I want it, but you have to choose between simple or a double. You just write a string, area of rectangle, column, and then here you just put your variable between curly brackets. So that's the way you can mix text strings and variables inside the same sequence using something which we call the f string. Otherwise, you've got to separate the variable from the string like it was done here. So area of first rectangle, column, and then separately after a comma, as you can see here, a space to have some space and the variable. But usually I would tend to use f strings these days. So if you want to use a mix of f string and quotes inside of those f strings, so if I want to add some quotes inside of my text string, let's say that I used single quotes on the outside of my f string. I will use double quotes inside of the f string. So, for instance, here I've got double quotes around first rectangle, and I've got single quotes, as you can see here, on the outside of my f string. So that would work. But I can't have single quotes inside of my f string, otherwise actually it would be mixed up, and the system would think, for instance, that the f string would end here, for instance, if I replace this with a single quote like this. Okay, so if I want to have around first rectangle some quotes, I have to use here double quotes like this. But I can do it the other way around also. So I can say, for instance, that let's remove those single quotes there, that I'm using double quotes around my here my string. So, but I have to put it obviously at the extremities of this string. So you have here the full f string inside of those double quotes, and here I can use single quotes around first rectangle. So let's print out this thing. So you see here that you have quotes around first rectangle. Okay, we'll do it for area 2, but we will replace here the double by single and single by double. Okay, so here we will just use single quotes for the f string, and inside of this we will use, let me just grab it there, we will use the double quote. Okay, so let's do this, okay, and if we print it out, you see the other possibilities of the f string with the double quotes around second rectangle. So yeah, that was quite a long tangent, I would say, but I wanted to show you this concept of f string, which is very, very important in Python code. So what do we have to cover now? We have to cover the concept of try, except, and finally. So that's very important because, for instance, when you're using APIs, sometimes there will be, some downtime or some, accessibility error with the API, and you want to handle the errors. You don't want all your code to break, especially if the code is being deployed in production on a server. You don't want the whole app to fall apart if there is any API call issue, for instance. So you have this concept of try, except, finally. And we will run it so that we understand what's going on there. Okay, so we want to divide x by y, okay, here. And if you know a little bit about math, you know that you can't divide by 0. So we first try to divide x by y, so 10 by 0. If this thing was possible, it would have printed out the result is blah blah blah. But here we have an except rule which says sorry, but you can't divide by 0. Okay, we have another possibility. If we don't have two numbers, if we have, for instance, a number and a string, then we have another error handling telling us both inputs must be numbers. And as you can see, you can use some extra parameters here to handle different types of errors that you could expect in a specific scenario, like here division by 0, here type error, and this thing will be executed whatever happens. So whatever happens in this function, in those statements, we will just print out this line after finally. Okay, so if I just change this and I put something that's possible, like I put 2, for instance, and I run it again, as you can see, we have the result is 5 because it worked. Okay, so we didn't have to handle any error. We just had the right result printed out here as the first step of this sequence. And if I remove Apple here, and if I put, let's put 0 again, then we will have you can't divide by 0. But if I put, let's say 3, then we will have here a float which is 3.33, etc. So it worked. So you see, depending on what you declare as variables here when you run this function divide, it will handle it in a different way. So if it works, it will just stop here and print the final statement here, because if you have a finally row, it will always be executed. You don't have to use finally. You can just remove this, and that will work just fine, basically. So if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it prints out the error, as you can see here. But you can add finally if you want to have a final statement at the end of this function. So that's the way you handle errors using try, except, and if you want to have an exception for a specific type of error, then there is a vocabulary, a set number of exception rules that you can add here to the except line. So for instance, here, zero division error, type error, etc. You can go online, ask ChatGPT for the different types of error that you can handle with the except line, for instance. So I hope that you understood this concept of try and except in Python. So what do we have next? We've already spent 38 minutes on this tutorial, but I think it's worth showing how ChatGPT led us in the right direction, showed us the right guidelines to learn the basics of Python, because you have already learned a lot in 38 minutes, and by the end of this tutorial we will have covered most of those elements. So importing modules. Okay, let's show an example. Let's show now a code example for modules import, and then a simple code example for OOP, object-oriented programming. And that would be the end for today after those two code snippets, because I think you need a good coffee to recover from this tutorial. So let's have a look at those suggestions. So we go to the end of this conversation. By the way, I will share this conversation with ChatGPT in the description below. So if you want to access this conversation and then use it in your own curriculum, just go to the description and click on the link, the direct link to the conversation. So module import example. Let's do this. So we just put in the demo, paste, and I will remove the results here. So we are importing a module called math, and math will give us the square root of a number. So that's one of the modules that you can import. There are plenty of modules that you can either import straight away from the core modules of Python, or also pip install. You will hear this a lot when you're using Python, pip install. So you can also install in your virtual environment public libraries using pip install. But here we are importing math, and then we're just running this, and we say that, yeah, the square root of 16 is 4, and the circumference of a circle here is 62.83. So we're just using this math module from Python, which we are importing at the beginning of our file. So that's one example. I would like to show you an example of using requests as a module. So show me an example, a code example using requests. Okay, requests with a free public API. Okay, hopefully the API will be accessible. Then we will do OOP, but let's do this. Okay, so we will import requests here. Okay, and here we will have a public API just for this demo that we will access. So I wanted to show you requests because, as I told you, the great thing about Python is that it's a very easy way to connect with APIs. if you're not using a proprietary SDK from, let's say, OpenAI or another provider, you can also use requests to connect to those APIs. So that's here a public API suggested by ChatGPT. And as you can see here, it's underlined in red, this module request. So we will just try to run it. And as you can see, there's no module named requests. And that's a good opportunity to demo the concept of pip install. So I will open the terminal there. Okay, so I'm inside my Python tutorial. And we will pip install requests. So basically what it does is downloading and installing the request module. Let's do this. Pip install requests. Okay, it's doing it. And when it's finished, you can see here, we are back in our terminal, and I can just type clear to clear all of this. And now if I run my code again, I can see now that it worked. Okay, so what did it do, this thing? So we imported request. Now, as you can see, there's no red line under requests. It's available in the libraries. So if I go to external libraries here, we can see now here that we have in the packages their request. Okay, so it's been installed in our virtual environment for this specific project. Okay, let's go back to the file. So here we have a URL. That's the URL of the API endpoint, which we will access. And the way we access this API is this way. So we say that the response will be a GET request. Remember maybe my first or second tutorial when I showed you the difference between POST and GET. So we will get information from this URL. So the variable URL here, URL. And then if the status code of the response is 200, so basically if it worked, so if the request was successful, the status code will then be 200. We will say that the posts that we want to retrieve are basically the JSON version of the response. So we pass the response JSON, and then we will print out the first 5 posts. So we say that for, remember the for loop, for the post, for one post in posts, up to 5 posts. So that's just here something to tell us that we will just take the first 5 posts. So for every post in post until the 5th one, we will print out, so we will access different elements from those posts. We will print out the ID of the post, the title of the post, the body of the post, and we will insert a new line between each of those posts. And if it didn't work, so if the response was not 200 or the status code 200, then we just say, oh, this thing didn't work, and we print out the response status code. But as you can see here, it worked for 5 of those posts. So if I just restrict this to 2 instead of 5 and I run it again, we will just have 2 lorem ipsum posts there. And I can just say, okay, I don't want the ID of the post. I just want, the text info. So I do this like this. And now you see we just have the title, the body here, a space between the 2 posts, and again the title and the body. So this is one of the modules which requires a pip install, requests. And we imported requests, and then we used requests, as you can see here in our code, to basically call this public API for the demo. Beautiful example given here by ChatGPT. And we have one last little thing to cover for today, and then I will leave you until the next video. And this is the concept of OOP, which stands for Object-Oriented Programming. And this is the example suggested by ChatGPT. So we will import it there, or copy paste it here. And yeah, so it defines an object called car using class followed by the name of this object, car. And then let me just remove this. Okay. So first we initialize this class. We always have to use self. So we won't pass this self when we will use this class in the code, but we have to write it here in the initialization phase. So we have to say def and then underscore underscore init underscore underscore, then parentheses, and inside the parentheses self and the different attributes of this car. So the make of the car, the model of the car, the year of the car. So that's the way you do it. And then we have to put a method to describe the car. So the description will basically be, and you see here a nice example of a f string. So fortunately I explained to you the f string a while ago. So f string with three different attributes, the year, the make, and the model, and this returns the description. So the description is basically a concatenation of the three attributes. So then we are creating two different cars using this model, which is an object. So we have the first car, and between the parentheses, remember we don't put the self, we just put the word car, parentheses, and then we have the make, that's the first element, Toyota, then the model, Corolla, then the year 2020, and for the other one we have Honda Civic and 2018. And what we want to print out is a description of the car using this function inside of this object, which describes the car in the way we have just set it up. So year, make, and model. So here we print it out, and here we separate the text string from the actual variables and the function. So that's the other way to do it, as you saw before. So it will print out the description of the first car and the description of the second car. So basically you access this car like this with car1 dot, and then you apply the function, okay, which we define inside of the object. So basically it's a quick way to reuse some codes without rewriting this code all the time. That's the idea of OOP, object-oriented programming. So if I run this, it will make sense. You see, car 1 is 2020 Toyota Corolla, car 2 is 2018 Honda Civic. And we could say here, please add another function to the car class to demonstrate that you can set multiple functions in the same class. Okay. So that was probably the most complex aspect of this tutorial, OOP. And to be fair, you don't have to use OOP all the time in your code. You can have a more procedural approach, just going sequentially if you want to code in Python. But if you are coding a very complex project, you might see or you might use this OOP approach. So here we have some modified script, and we will just paste it here and see what's the difference with the first example. Paste demo. So here we have the same initialization. So we initialize make, model, and year. We have the same here for the description of the car, and here we have some other function to update the year of the make and the model. Okay, so let's see how we use this. So we define a car, my car, with the 3 attributes of this car, which is Toyota, Corolla, and the year. And then we print out the description of the car in the same way we've just done it. So we access car and we apply the description function that we have here. Okay. And then we want to just update the year of our car. So we made a mistake. It's not 2020, it's actually 2022. So we access my car. So here, this specific car. And we update the year of the car. And then we print out the new description after updating the year. So let's run this and see what it gives us. So by default, it's a 2020 Toyota Corolla. And then we update it to 2022 this year. And after update, my car is a 2022 Toyota Corolla. So that's a good example of how you can have multiple functions inside the same class description. So I hope that you have learned a lot in less than 1 hour. It wouldn't have been possible without the help of our friend ChatGPT. ChatGPT gave us very good indications of what you should learn when you start your Python journey, and ChatGPT gave us very good coding examples to demonstrate those concepts. And I promised you just before leaving this tutorial that I would show you the difference between Visual Studio and PyCharm. So in PyCharm, as you've seen multiple times, we've got some code suggestion by GitHub Copilot inline, but it's only code completion. If I open now Visual Studio here, okay, it looks a bit the same, it's a bit different. I can access straight away here in my code editor the chat. So 2 different ways. So on the left side here in the sidebar, I can just access the chat here, and I could, for instance, ask here GitHub Copilot to show me a code example to demonstrate the concept of a for loop iterating through a list. Okay, so it's the same as in ChatGPT here on the right hand side, but straight inside my my editor, and I can just decide to insert it there. So if I remove my hello world there and I want to insert my example there, as you can see, we've got the code added straight away inside the editor, and I can just run my Python file. Okay, I first to save this because in PyCharm it's saved by default. You have to save it, so Control S here in Visual Studio. So we run my Python file. As you can see, it printed out the different elements from my list. So I can also clear this. We can also access the chat inside the file. So if I press Control I on my keyboard, as you can see, we can add Copilot to generate code. So could you here, I say refactor the code to iterate through a list of cities. So as you can see, it's comparing the 2 codes. So here we had fruits and here we have cities, and we can accept the modification. And as you can see, beautiful, now we have here another example, but with cities, and we also have to save it. Yeah, I'm so accustomed to PyCharm, so let's save it again. Boom, and we have here New York, London, Tokyo, and Paris. So That's just to show you that inside of Visual Studio, you have this benefit that because it's Microsoft and Microsoft partner with OpenAI, invested in OpenAI, they have a closer, deeper integration of GitHub Copilot inside of Visual Studio. It's coming to PyCharm, but at the moment, I'm just juggling between ChatGPT and PyCharm when I'm using ChatGPT as a coding assistant. And also you will see sometimes that the code that's generated by ChatGPT for some reason is better than the code that would be generated by GitHub Copilot inside of Visual Studio for some reasons in the way models are running behind the scenes. But that gives us a very good idea of how to start with Python, how to use ChatGPT or GitHub Copilot to help you learn Python, and how to use GitHub Copilot both in PyCharm and in Visual Studio. We're just under the hour. I hope that you loved this tutorial. If you did, just subscribe to my channel and hit the like button, and you will be notified when there is a new video. Thank you very much for your attention.